This is a huge day for the Western Athletics Conference. As you know, UTRGV and before that UT Pan American have been members of the WAC since 2013, I think. And during that whole period of time, stability has not been a hallmark of the conference. I mean, we've had teams leave and we've worried about the size of the conference. The importance of this is, of course, the AQ, the automatic qualifier for tournaments. And so creating stability in the conference has been a primary focus since I started in the conference. And so what's happened today creates the stability we've waited for a long time. And as those of you who were involved with UTPA when it was not in a conference know, you have to have a conference home to have a successful athletics program. So we're really pleased to have this. The second thing this does, it creates, by adding all the Texas schools, it creates natural rivalries. It reduces the distance we have to travel. It makes our lives in athletics a lot easier. So this is a huge day for the WAC and for UTRGV and for everybody involved, because it solves a lot of problems for us.
All right, Alex, you want to go first?
Good afternoon, everyone. Obviously, there's been some reporting today regarding UTRGV adding football. I know there's been conversations. You guys have done a feasibility study within the last 3 to 4 years. Where does this announcement leave the university now in terms of adding football moving forward?
When we did Chase, anytime you want to answer these questions, I'll let you. But anyway, as you know, we did this study. Mac Brown headed that up for us several years ago. At that time, there was really no path forward. And so we have the material, but we didn't really pursue it. This does possibly create a path forward for us. And so we're committed to exploring this again, to looking carefully at the possibility of adding football. It would do a number of positive things for us and for the conference as well. Now, having said that, that's a process that has to go through. I mean, that requires student approval, board approval. And so there are a number of things in the process that have to be done, but we're committed to exploring that process, and that's our commitment.
And Alex, I would add on top of that, everything the president said, that the process is key. Anytime you look at adding new programs, whether they're academic or athletic, it's truly about community buy-in, and it starts with our campus community. The process will certainly start there with our students and our faculty and staff. But nonetheless, what an exciting day for the Western Athletic Conference. And Dr. Bailey won't say this, but he deserves a tremendous amount of credit for helping pull this off as a member of the board of directors for the conference, working in concert with the other league presidents to see where our league was when we joined in 2013, to see where we are today, and to see those 5 institutions and their presidents and their athletic directors here in Houston wanting to be part of something special. And then to do it big time here in the state of Texas, to now have 6 teams from the state of Texas within driving distance, create those rivalries like Dr. Bailey talked about. It's going to help us with our missed class days. We're going to be more efficient with our travel. And so certainly football is a big piece, because football is back in the WAC, and that's definitely evident with the expansion today. I think we can lose sight of what it's going to do for all 16 of our sports, really across the board. And I couldn't be more thrilled. And I can tell you the energy here today is really phenomenal. But a credit to Dr. Bailey, our commissioner, Jeff Hurd, and all those folks that worked tirelessly to really pull this off.
So there's been no formal commitment to add the sport within a certain time frame?
No, we can't. There is a process you have to go through to do this. This isn't something that an AD or a president can simply say we're going to do. There's a process that has to be followed. And our commitment is to engage in that process.
Okay, Daniel.
Well, I think it's no surprise that I can see the excitement and looking at you guys and seeing all the work that you've put into it. It's almost giving me shades of the old Southwest Conference with how many Texas schools we've added, which is going to be huge for those rivalries, those in-state rivalries, travel and everything. But I think it's interesting that all of this comes out of a conversation started from really the craziness that was COVID-19 and adjusting to that. So can you guys speak to how you got to this decision from really what seemed like such a dark place through all the craziness that was COVID-19 and dealing with that?
Chase, you want to give it a shot or you want?
Yeah, no, sure. And I think Dr. Bailey, if you'll elaborate from a board director standpoint, but I think it says a lot about the institutions that are joining our league right now. There's a lot of challenges in higher education. There's a lot of things that a lot of campuses are experiencing during the trials of COVID-19, and we're certainly experiencing our fair share. But it's really neat to be now aligned with institutions, our current membership, but plus the additional 5 that are coming to our conference that are forward thinkers. They value athletics. They bring in tremendous institutional profiles. This is something that doesn't happen overnight. Going back to the work that Dr. Bailey has been a part of with the board of directors, the conversations that have to happen to get to this point, it takes a lot of like-minded individuals and like-minded institutions to come together and be able to pull something off like this. But to be able to do it during this time, to have such positive and exciting news, we all know we're going to get through this. We know we're going to get through it together. But the future for our athletics program, for the WAC, we can truly say that brighter days are ahead and new and exciting days are ahead. And it could be as soon as, as this fall. So it's an enormous amount of work, and it's not something that happens easily or quickly, but it really, I think, boils down to dedicated people, CEOs and presidents of institutions that are like-minded. Their visions for their campuses are very similar, and they value Division I athletics, and they want to provide great opportunities to their student athletes. And I think that really sums up today's announcement.
Ray.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I've got to ask, with the almost non-full committal to football, what other sports could be in the mix of being added for the Title IX purpose?
Yeah, Ray, that's a great question. And that's something that you'll see us explore and have been exploring, certainly my 18 months and even previously before I arrived. You look at the WAC, we're now going to sponsor 20 sports in total. So there'll be 10 male, 10 female sports. We've had strong swimming and diving. Softball was strengthened today. And so there's several opportunities for us to continue to enhance our portfolio of sports programs. But going back to what the president said earlier, these things are conversation-based. It starts with our campus community, hearing from our students, working with our student leadership groups, and seeing what fits us the best. There's some natural things that I think we can all assume would be good fits for our region and for the Valley. But it is exciting that the footprint is growing and the sports offerings within the WAC are strengthening, which gives us, again, the ability to have those conversations, not just about football, but really sports in general and what makes the most sense for UTRGV.
Okay, Shehan.
Hey, Chase, we had received some communication that you guys had submitted sort of a letter of intent for the purposes of potentially starting football. Do you have kind of comments specifically on that? And what does that process kind of look like for you guys?
I'll defer to Dr. Bailey. Do you want to address that first, and I can follow up?
Yes, let me do one quick thing here. Okay. No, we have not submitted a letter of intent. I think the letter that's referred to is one that our commissioner sent to the schools who are thinking about joining the conference, and so I think that's the letter that's referred to. There's not a letter of intent. We have verbally told everybody who wanted to listen that we were committed to beginning this process, and so that's where that is. Does that answer the question?
Yes. And then to follow up with Chase, what does that process of getting this underway, I guess, sort of look like for you guys?
You know, we start off with a study that's already been completed. So it is 3.5, 4 years old. So there's some updating, and then obviously with today's news and the WAC now sponsoring FCS football. The previous study was very much focused on FBS, and I think that's a piece of the puzzle that's really important as we communicate on our campus and as we talk with our external constituents. This first approach is FCS, and so we have to go back and update the financials and do some work internally to make sure that we've got some things aligned so we can speak to groups and answer specific questions. But it goes back to starting with our campus community. We will start those conversations. We will engage with open ears. We will listen and look forward to having good, productive, and fun conversations about what the future can be for athletics and and obviously with football as well being on the table. But then, like the president said, there's a legislative piece to this, the Board of Regents and their support. But it goes back to really focusing on campus with our students and our faculty and staff, and that's where we'll start this process.
You know, can I add one thing? There's one thing I don't want people to lose sight of. You know, on our campus, when you start talking about football, immediately people start talking about fee increases. So remember that if you are a UTRGV student, there are two things that apply and will not change. First of all, if you're a full-time student in good standing and a Texas resident, right? Three things there. You're going to be Texas resident, full-time student, you got to be in good standing, and your family income is $95,000 or less, you pay no tuition, no mandatory fees. That's not going to change. No tuition, no mandatory fees. That won't change. Furthermore, when you start at UTRGV, you have a 4-year guarantee of tuition and mandatory fees. So if you start this year, the tuition and fee level you pay this year won't change over your 4-year period. Those things won't change. And so it's very important not to lose sight of the fact that our concern is always with doing what we do in a fiscally responsible way that has minimal impact on our students. You know, somebody asked me what I was proudest of about our institution. There are a lot of things, but one thing that I'm really proud of, if you look at US News and World Reports and you look at they have a ranking of universities by least amount of debt that students graduate with. We're in the top 5 in the United States. We're the only public university in there. And the other universities are like Princeton and Harvard and Duke, and the schools of Stanford, schools like that. So we're quite proud of that. We will always take the welfare of our students first. And so please don't ever lose sight of that.
Alex?
I hate to make this so much about football, but gentlemen, I wonder what having all the work already done with that feasibility study helps you in terms of expediting the process or expediting the conversations and all of these things. Can you kind of give us a little color on how, having already done the study, putting a pause on any movement, and then this announcement could provide for you to start football within maybe a four-year period?
You know, I think it does. It sets us up a little bit ahead of the curve. And you know, Alex, when my previous institution, really parallel to UTRGV, was also conducting a football feasibility study. And so going through one myself, and then plus inheriting the great work that was done several years ago, gives us great perspective, and it allows those conversations to be had probably a little bit quicker. There was a lot of people engaged in that initial process that Oliver Luck and Mac Brown led for the institution. And so I think that does give us a leg up, and it allows us to have those conversations with more educated data. But as you well know, the landscape is changing so fast in college athletics. And so we really need to spend some time looking at the pro formas, looking at what the FCS model would look like, and really fine tuning those numbers to make sure that when we do engage in those conversations, that they are up-to-date figures and that we're really providing full scope so people can have their opinions and help make their decisions on where they stand with the addition of sports. But no question, I think going through that study and us doing that 4 years ago with as much buy-in and as many people were involved in that process certainly helps us.
And just to follow up, do you have a timetable on when to start these conversations again about moving forward this way?
Today was a start. Today was a start, and I know the president messaged campus today to really alert them to the excitement of the WAC expansion. Obviously, mentioning that football was coming online for the Western Athletic Conference, but today is a conversation starter. And I think there's conversations that will come to us, but there'll also be conversations that we'll actively engage in. And the other thing that is big for our media partners that are in the Rio Grande Valley, athletics is a unifier, and we know that, and we see that across the country. But we have an opportunity with our current 16 sports to really rally the Valley. But you have to recognize, and you can't ignore the fact that football is another rallying piece of an institution's puzzle. And so there's conversations in Hidalgo County and Cameron County with our students in Brownsville, our city leaders and all the communities and municipalities that we serve. And so while there's more people to engage, if we do this the right way and we're able to have good open dialogue, we've got an unbelievable region that can get behind this, no matter what it is, whether it's our medical school, whether it's growing enrollment, adding new programs to the institution. When we can get true community and valley buy-in, special things happen, and we've seen it. And so we're going to make sure that we use that same blueprint as we engage in these conversations here in the next few weeks, months, and years.
Shehan.
The other thing I'd point out too, remember we're also dealing with a pandemic right now. So, we're balancing a lot of balls, as you can imagine. And it's an interesting time in higher education. I've been in higher education 40 years, and a couple of years ago, I said, I've been here a long time. I've seen everything there is to see. That's not true. I hadn't seen a pandemic, right? So, hey, you just always keep in mind, we're balancing a lot of balls right now, and there are a lot of different issues that come up. So,
Well, for Chase, so obviously with UTRGV and with Charlton obviously coming into the conference, how significant was it for you guys when the conversation started of adding 4 new Texas schools, especially to the conference?
Yeah, it's extremely exciting. From my standpoint, we've got Coach Matlock on here. I know our coaches are excited about it. Over 50% of our student athletes are from the state of Texas. And I suspect, and if you look at Coach Matlock's roster alone, it's a much, much higher percentage. And so the truth of this is that our student athletes are from Texas. Their parents and their families and friends live in a variety of communities across the state. They're going to have the opportunity to watch their young people play and compete so much more consistently. So from a student athlete standpoint, that's key. And that's going to help us in recruiting. It's going to help our current student athletes that'll have a chance to compete against these teams. I talked about travel, the efficiency of that, the efficiency of going to divisional play and us being part of the Southwest Division footprint is going to be able to allow us to do so much more, as far as missed class days and maximizing our trips, our non-conference. We'll continue to invest and make sure that we're playing the right teams and we're building our profile on a non-conference schedule. But there's so many benefits to having now 6 very strong Texas schools as part of our conference. But the other piece that selfishly at UTRGV we're excited about is that now we get to expand our brand and our profile across the state. We have an opportunity for people to learn about us, to learn about how special the Valley is, to know that we've got nearly 33,000 students in the School of Medicine. And so the growth that we're so proud of, we now have a much larger platform through sports to be able to paint that picture across the state of Texas. And so there's certainly athletic benefits to this, but I think with our profile as an institution, there's tremendous benefit there as we grow our brand throughout the state of Texas.
The last round of realignment was so much sort of the top then informing the bottom. So I'm curious from both of your perspective, what was the decision behind being very aggressive and kind of being the first to act?
can I answer that? I was president at Texas Tech when the Big 12 started falling apart. And so, I had to deal with, we had to deal with A&M leaving for the SEC, Missouri for the SEC, Colorado for the Pac-10 or 12 or however many there are, and and Nebraska for the Big Ten. And so suddenly I sat there and I mean, we were the victim of what was happening, and schools were leaving. The Big 12 at that time did not have a plan to expand, to build itself, to strengthen itself. It was a very difficult situation. And so that experience really led me to push my whole time here on expanding and building the strongest conference possible. You're either aggressive and proactive, or you're reactive and deal with consequences. And so it was very important for us to be proactive and aggressive. And that experience that I went through, gosh, a decade ago, has informed my whole thinking about how you deal with conference and conference stability.
All right, Andrew.
Question for Chase. Chase, I know earlier in the pandemic, you and I kind of spoke about your experience as an AD in the Sun Belt and kind of some of the difficulties that geography presented there. So I'm curious to get your take now with this news on how this will benefit both UTRGV and the WAC as a whole from a financial standpoint, both as a cost saving measure and from a negotiating standpoint as you guys get ready to negotiate a new media rights deal as a conference.
Yeah, the travel, it's well documented, and Jonas put together a nice depiction of the reduction in mileage. If you look at the overall membership, and certainly if you just look at the Southwest Division, we talked about the media markets that we're going to have exposure in now. It's going to enhance our footprint in the state. It's going to give us more relevancy really across the state of Texas, and so those things are very, very beneficial. Travel on the WAC has not been easy. It's not been easy. We go very, very often. They're all trips that are taken by plane. And so the fact that we can now spread our resources, not reduce our resources, but take those cost savings and invest them in other key parts of our program, that's what we get excited about. That's what our coaches are excited about, on top of everything else that we've mentioned so far today. The media rights piece is huge. And the fact that we're bringing in 5 wonderful institutions, a lot of strength in their programs. I mean, you can look at their profile, whether it be in baseball, women's basketball, volleyball, men's basketball, obviously, with some of the success with especially 2 of our newest Texas members. All of those things are going to help in a big, big way. Being 13 members strong, and then I think there was a graph that was put up earlier during the press conference of the different media markets that we now have a significant footprint and exposure. Those things are all going to play very, very well as the conference, the board of directors, and obviously any help they need from the athletic directors. Whatever we can help negotiate, we're in much better position today than we were a week ago and certainly 6 months ago. So today's announcement not just answers a lot of the AQ questions and the conference stability and security, but it lets us be way more forward thinking than I think we've been in a long, long time as a league. And that's going to benefit UTRGV in a big way.
And then a quick follow-up on that note, you touched on it and Commissioner Hurd alluded to this earlier, but you guys are at 13 schools right now with the divisional setup, and he sort of alluded to potentially adding a 14th school, maybe in the Southwest Division, as soon as 2022, 2023, maybe. I'm just curious, are those conversations you guys have had as a WAC ADs and university presidents? And if so, what is the timeline roughly on that?
Dr. Bailey, do you want to speak from a board director standpoint? I can certainly take it afterwards.
Well, it's easier to schedule for 14 teams. And so again, I can't talk about conversations that we're having with individual schools, except to say the commissioner is very involved in trying to move that forward. And as quickly as possible. Again, the goal here is to create stability, to create a rational alignment of schools that minimizes the travel, the missed days for students and things like that. And so that's really where we're headed with this.
Okay. Ray?
This was for Dr. Bailey. For 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 you, how hard has it been to just get to a stability point with all the fluctuating that's been happening here at this university to get it now, um, now in a better present stand of point? What's been the key thing for you?
Are you talking about stability at the university or stability in the conference?
From a university standpoint, where now you don't have the tuition stuff for in-state students, and from that point.
Yeah. Well, our whole, the building of UTRGV has been a process. And so the fact that you open your doors in 2015 doesn't mean that that's the university that you'll always be. And so one of the things about universities, you're always in a process. And in our case, it's been a process of growth and development, of being able to do more and more for our students. We're very fortunate. Had I been at another university in another place, that process might have been trying to hang on to what we had. We're fortunate to be in a high growth area. We've had good enrollment growth among students. We've been able to add an excellent administrative team, and Chasse is a big part of that. I mean, his hiring was superb here, but I've got a tremendous administrative team. And as we've gone forward as an institution, we've been able to do things like the tuition guarantees that have really, I think, helped us move forward tremendously as an institution. We're in a process, and we will be for a long time. We're adding new programs. Most of you know that we're adding a podiatry school. There's no school of podiatric medicine in the state of Texas. We'll have the first one. We'll be adding other very high quality programs like that as we go along. So we're on an upward trajectory as an institution that differentiates us from much of the United States right now. And it's a real privilege to be at a school like this.
Daniel?
So the question was partially already answered, but Dr. Bailey, I was just taken back by your experience at Texas Tech and how interesting that was. And Mr. Conque keeps referring to forward thinking and how the WAC conference is really looking forward to starting this and bringing back a very regional mindset. But isn't that really an older mindset, something that conferences used to do? And then they thought this idea of expanding their brand out to different states started to be the new thing. Clearly that wasn't the case. So can you speak to the benefits through your experience at Texas Tech to having a more regionalized conference, and why maybe the old school way of thinking is actually new school and progressive nowadays?
It's interesting. If you go back to the old, Pac-12, the schools that where A&M was a member, Nebraska was a member, it was a very homogeneous conference in terms of the type of school you had, the size of the community, the travel. Things were much easier. When the Big 12 expanded, a lot of the expansion in a decade ago was driven by TV rights and TV markets. And so you had West Virginia, for instance, great school, wonderful place. You're not going to drive to West Virginia, right? Not from Lubbock. And so it's a different way of looking at it. If you're in one of the Power 5 conferences, that might be fine because you're dealing with athletic budgets of 75 to 150 million. Chasse can tell you we do not have that athletics budget. He wishes he had a larger fraction of that. But the point is, when you have a smaller conference and a smaller athletics budget, the smaller your geographic area, the better it is. And again, it's the travel. Just think how much easier it is for our baseball team to get up to Tarleton, Sam Houston, over to Abilene to play. than it is to go to Seattle or or other places. And we love going out there, but still that's pretty hard. So I think that's a very important thing for conferences such as ours to have a geographic logic to them. And you really have this now with the new WAC. We're real pleased. We think it's really good all around. By the way, you sometimes forget that we get students from other parts of the state of Texas. Some of you know we have an annual Christmas card contest, and our students enter a contest to design the university Christmas card every year. And so I was talking to the young man who won it this year. It's terrific, did a terrific job. And I said, "Where are you from?" He said, it was right outside Houston. Maybe it was Spring or one of the suburbs of Houston. And I said, "Well, how'd you get down here?" He said, "Well, I had family down here." But the truth is, if you start looking at our student body, we increasingly draw students from around the state. It's very important for us to play sports there, to have more of a presence there. This will impact us in many positive ways. So, but the question is about the logic of the smaller geographic size. For conferences like ours, it makes all the sense in the world. If you're in one of the Power 5 conferences and you have, huge budgets, well, that's one thing. But in our conference, it makes a lot more sense.
Coach Matlock, I think that kind of begs a follow-up for you. How do you think this expansion, particularly with the 4 new Texas schools, is going to be able to help your program?
I'll use the example. I was on the expansion of the Big 12 going to West Virginia, and they didn't know who the Big 12 was. We recruited the East Coast hard, and it was ACC and SEC territory. Since I've been down here at UTRGV, if you go into the northern part of Texas or East or West Texas and ask them what the WAC is, they'd be like, "What? What conference is that?" So 100% from a recruiting standpoint, it's going to really help us in the state of Texas. We've done okay in the state of Texas in baseball, but talking to soccers and different programs in the school, they have a tough time with kids in Texas. And we need to do a better job in Texas. And this is going to really help us. And of course, Chase and Mr. Bailey have talked about it. The travel for us, if you guys check our records over the last 5 years in the conference, we're not very good late. All sports. Coach Hill had a good run late last year. We had a good run on paper, but in the grand scheme of things, we weren't playing very well and didn't play well in the conference tournament. We're pretty tired. I mean, this is huge for us to be able to just get on a bus and go play some teams and come home. A lot of times we don't get home till Monday night from a weekend series, and you finish playing Sunday because of travel. So the 2 big advantages for me is people in Texas are going to now know what the WAC is. They haven't known what the WAC is. And they're going to know what the WAC is. So when you recruit a kid, hey, you want to play in a WAC conference, get to travel to Seattle, California, New Mexico, Utah. Those are big advantages for kids to be able to get out and explore the United States. And they know that, of course, they're going to be in Texas to see their kids play. So this is huge for us. We're so excited to recruit and see how things roll out of the next couple of years.